Welcome to the YouTube channel Bookworm. Today we will listen to a brief retelling of the following book. Portrait of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. On a sunny summer day, the talented painter Basil Hallward receives in his studio an old friend, Lord Henry Wotton, an Epicurean aesthete, the Prince of Paradox, by definition, one of the characters. In the latter, the features of Oscar Wilde, well known to contemporaries, are easily recognizable. The author of the novel gives him the prevailing number of his famous aphorisms. Captivated by a new idea, Hallward enthusiastically works on a portrait of an unusually handsome young man whom he recently met. Tom is 20 years old. His name is Dorian Gray. Soon the sitter appears, listening with interest to the paradoxical judgments of the weary hedonist. Dorian's youthful beauty, which captivated Basil, does not leave Lord Henry indifferent either. But now the portrait is finished. Those present admire his perfection. Golden-haired, adoring everything beautiful and liking himself, Dorian dreams aloud. If the portrait changed, and I could always remain the same. Touched, Basil gives the young man a portrait. Ignoring the sluggish resistance of Basil, Dorian accepts the invitation of Lord Henry, and, with the active participation of the latter, plunges into secular life. Attends dinner parties, spends evenings at the opera. Meanwhile, having paid a visit to his uncle Lord Farmer, Lord Henry learns about the dramatic circumstances of Dorian's origin. Raised by a wealthy guardian, he painfully experienced the early death of his mother, who, contrary to family traditions, fell in love and tied her fate with an unknown infantry officer, at the instigation of an influential father-in-law who soon killed in a duel. Dorian himself, meanwhile, falls in love with the aspiring actress Sybil Vane, a girl of about 17, with a face as gentle as a flower, with a Greek head entwined with dark braids. Eyes are blue lakes of passion, lips are rose petals. She plays with amazing spirituality on the wretched stage of a beggarly theater in the East Indies, the best parts of Shakespeare's repertoire. In turn, Sybil, dragging out a half-starved existence with her mother and brother, 16-year-old James, who is preparing to sail as a sailor on a merchant ship to Australia. Dorian seems to be an embodied miracle, the beautiful prince descended from transcendental heights. Her lover does not know that in her life, there is also a secret carefully guarded from prying eyes. Both Sibylla and James are illegitimate children, the fruits of a love union that once tied their mother, a tortured, withered woman, serving in the same theater, with a person of a foreign class. Having found in Sybil the living embodiment of beauty and talent, the naive idealist Dorian triumphantly announces his engagement to Basil and Lord Henry. The future of their ward instills anxiety in both. However, both of them willingly accept an invitation to a performance where Dorian's chosen one must play the role of Juliet. However, swallowed up by bright hopes for the real happiness that awaits her with her beloved, Sybil that evening reluctantly, as if under duress after all. Playing the lover is a profanity, she believes, pronounces the words of the role, for the first time seeing without embellishment the squalor of the scenery, the falsity of stage partners, and the poverty of the enterprise. A loud failure follows, causing the skeptical mockery of Lord Henry, the restrained sympathy of the good-natured Basil, and the total collapse of Dorian's castles in the air, in desperation throwing Sybil. "You killed my love." Having lost faith in his beautiful-hearted illusions, mixed with the belief in the indissolubility of art and reality, Dorian spends a sleepless night wandering around deserted London. Sybil, on the other hand, finds his cruel confession beyond her powers. The next morning, preparing to send her a letter with words of reconciliation, he learns that the girl committed suicide that same evening. Friends patrons and then react to the tragic news, each in their own way. Basil advises Dorian to strengthen his spirit, and Lord Henry, not to shed tears in vain for Sybil Vane. In an effort to console the young man, he invites him to the opera, promising to introduce him to his charming sister, Lady Gwendolen. To Basil's bewilderment, Dorian accepts the invitation, and only the portrait recently presented to him by the artist becomes a merciless mirror of the spiritual metamorphosis brewing in him. A hard wrinkle is indicated on the flawless face of the young Greek god. Seriously worried, Dorian puts the portrait out of sight. And again, his helpful friend Mephistopheles, Lord Henry, helps him drown out the disturbing pricks of conscience. On the advice of the latter, he plunges headlong into reading a strange book by a newfangled French author, a psychological study about a man who has decided to experience all the extremes of life. Bewitched by her for a long time, it seemed that the heavy smell of incense rose from her pages and intoxicated the brain. Dorian, in the next 20 years, in the narrative of the novel they fit into one chapter, falls more and more in love with his beauty and observes with great interest the decomposition of his souls. As if drunk in his ideal shell, he seeks consolation in the magnificent rites and rituals of foreign religions, in music, in collecting antiquities and precious stones, in narcotic potions offered in brothels of notoriety. Drawn by hedonistic temptations, falling in love over and over again, but not able to love, he does not shun dubious connections and suspicious acquaintances. The glory of a soulless seducer of young minds is fixed behind him. Recalling the destinies of fleeting chosen ones, broken at his whim, Dorian tries to reason with Basil Hallward, who has long cut off all ties with him, but was going to visit him before leaving for Paris. But in vain. In response to fair reproaches, he laughingly invites the painter to see the true face of his former idol, captured on the Hallward portrait, gathering dust in a dark corner. To the astonished Basil, the frightening face of the voluptuous old man opens up. However, the spectacle turns out to be too much for Dorian. Holding the creator of the portrait responsible for his moral behavior, he, in a fit of uncontrollable rage, stabs a dagger into the neck of a friend of his young days, and then, calling for help one of the former associates in revels and feasts, the chemist Alan Campbell, blackmailing him with some shameful secret known only to both of them, makes him dissolve Basil's body in nitric acid, material evidence of the villainy he committed. Tormented by belated remorse, he again seeks oblivion in drugs, and he almost dies when some tipsy sailor recognizes him in a suspicious brothel at the very bottom of London. This is James Wayne, who found out too late about the fatal fate of his sister, and swore at all costs to take revenge on her offender. However, fate for the time being keeps him from physical death, but not from the all-seeing eye of Hallward's portrait. This portrait is like a conscience. Yes, conscience. And it is necessary to destroy it. Dorian concludes, having survived all the temptations of the world, even more devastated and lonely than before, vainly envious of both the purity of an innocent village girl and the dedication of his accomplice involuntarily Alan Campbell, who found the strength to commit suicide, and even the spiritual aristocracy of his friend-tempter Lord Henry, who, it seems, is alien to any moral obstacles, but incomprehensibly believes that every crime is vulgar. Late at night, alone with himself in a luxurious London mansion, Dorian attacks the portrait with a knife, trying to chop and destroy it. The servants who rose to the cry discover the dead body of an old man in a tailcoat in the room, and a portrait, timeless in its radiant grandeur. Thus ends the novel parable about a man for whom, in some moments, evil was only one of the means of realizing what he considered the beauty of life.